Number 8, Alabama, traveling to the Commonwealth to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. It's going to be Saturday, 12 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. Kentucky, let's start with them. Where has the run game gone? For 7 games, the running game for Kentucky, led by Ray Davis, was about as good as there was, not just in the SEC, but in all of college football. 7 games entering the bye week, Ray Davis was averaging almost 7 yards per carry. Demisuma Kongbe was averaging 9.6 yards per carry. Granted, didn't get as many touches, but that's a pretty ridiculous 1-2 punch as far as rush efficiencies are concerned. The last 2 games, however, it's come crashing down. It's crashing down in a big way. Now, playing against better competition defensively, especially against the run, so it's understandable that maybe you're going to come back to earth a little bit, but the drop-off this significantly is eye-opening. Kentucky against Tennessee averaged just 3 yards per carry. They totaled just 72 yards on the ground for the game and held Ray Davis to just 2.6 per clip. Not good. And then last week you thought, well, maybe Tennessee's just excellent against the run. And they are. I think Tennessee's very good against the run. But it was compounded last week when they went to Starkville. They averaged under 4 yards a carry again, just 110 on the ground. Ray Davis, just 3.8 per carry. So they've been very, very solid, I think, up to this point, but they got to find something now as they move forward against stout competition. One thing Kentucky has done a pretty good job of is that they are pretty good on the perimeter. Their perimeter run game's been very efficient, and I think that could be a spot where they might find a little bit of room against Alabama. Kentucky's passing game was abysmal. It was not good. I mean, we called the game against Georgia. I've revisited and watched their tape since. I watched the Tennessee game and I was like, that's not the same guy. I had to make sure that it was Devin Leary that started the game against the Tennessee Volunteers. And it was. When I'm trying to figure out, like, why can't I just want to get that guy every time, right? If I get the guy I got against, say, Florida, if I get the guy I got against Georgia, then it's going to be really hard for Kentucky to be able to manufacture offense. If you're that one-dimensional and you're only running the football and your passing game can't take some of the pressure off, it's going to be really tough, especially in this league against quality competition once they get a lot of tape on you. And I got a ton of respect for Liam Cohen. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. But I need to have Devin Leary moving forward against Bama, against Louisville, against the teams they're going to face down the stretch in the bowl game, what have you. I need to have Devin Leary playing the way he did against Tennessee. He threw for 372 in that game. Threw passes and completed passes to 8 different receivers. A couple touchdowns. Now, look at last week. The numbers aren't going to necessarily jump off the page, but there were a lot of really impressive throws that he executed against Mississippi State. Now, it's just 156 and a couple scores. He did leave the game in the fourth quarter. He sounds like he's good to go, though. It sounds like he's fine. But it will be very interesting. Can he be at his best? Because they absolutely have to have him at his best. Because against Georgia, it wasn't close. They need him to play at a high level. And if he doesn't, it could be a little bit dicey. The protection, however, has been pretty good this year. They've given up just 13 sacks. That's the second fewest in the SEC. Georgia's the only one that's given up less. They've given up 9. So the protection's been good. The run game's been good with the exception of the last 2 weeks. So if the offense can put forth their best performance, then that's where I think it could become a little bit more interesting. Kentucky's defense did not play well in the month of October. They gave up an average of 40 points per game in October. But they did settle in against Mississippi State. They held them just 218 yards and 3 points. So that's good. Last week was good. October in general, not so good. They've been kind of at the bottom half in total defense and pass defense, but they're 6th in scoring defense. So this is a group behind Brad White, the defensive coordinator, that will bend and not break. And against Alabama, it's going to be highly important that they give up field goals and not touchdowns like LSU did and some of the teams previously did. They've done, I think, a pretty good job, though, against the run. They're 4th against the run, giving up just 111 yards per game. And they have 3 defenders that can legitimately take over the game. Trevor Wallace is excellent at the second level. Deion Walker's legit. And then you have J.J. Weaver on the edge. They have 3 guys that are really good in the front 7 that are going to be difficult to account for. For defense, they need to be really, really stout on the perimeter. That's, I think, going to be really important. They're really stout between the tackles. That's where Kentucky makes a living. Between the tackles, if you try to run it at them right downhill, you're going to struggle. That's where they are excellent. But on the perimeter, that's where there's some space. And Alabama, with what we saw last week from Jalen Milroe, looks like they're going to become more of a perimeter team in the run game, which I totally support. I think it's a great move. Acknowledging strength, acknowledging speed, acknowledging athleticism, and taking advantage of the opposing defenses with those things. I look at Milroe too. It really, in the first handful of games against SEC competition, it was always about chuck the ball deep, chuck the ball deep, chuck the ball deep, right? It was low percentage completions, but they were manufacturing big plays, which is a good recipe. It's a real good recipe. But I think against Kentucky, they're not going to give up those big plays as much. Where you make hay against Kentucky is on the intermediate throws. If you go back and you watch Carson Beck and you watch the Georgia tape, which is the worst performance by Kentucky's defense to date, you watch the Georgia tape, Carson Beck was constantly hitting those throws 15 to 20 yards downfield. He hit them over and over and over again. And that's where you could find some holes in Kentucky's zone defense. Alabama's protection, too, it's been a long topic of debate, right? We've talked about it on this show. The sack numbers are alarming, really alarming. But I actually dove a little bit deeper because I was just curious and had some extra time, so why wouldn't I? I actually looked at how long Jalen Milroe's averaging before he throws the football. And this is in the weeds, right? But just bear with me. He's averaging 3.2 seconds per dropback before he throws the ball. That's the third longest in the FBS. So he'll hold it forever. Most guys are in the mid twos. National average is about 2.5 in that vicinity. He's nearly 3/4 of a second longer before he pulls the trigger. Which tells me the offensive line, even though they've given up a lot of sacks, they are giving him some time to serve into field. They are giving him some time to allow routes to develop downfield. But I do think that's going to change. I think Jalen Milroe, after LSU, realizes, man, I could wait forever for things to come open, or I can just take off and probably make just as big a play with me carrying the football as me trying to drive it into a tight window. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues to progress with that development. He was amazing against LSU. He was amazing. And the run game, for the most part, for Alabama was amazing. 288, 6 touchdowns, all on the ground. Their longest passing plays last week were really just checkdowns. I mean, short throws, easy throws, high percentage throws. So I do think they might have hit another gear last week with what they might be able to accomplish offensively as they continue forward in the season. A couple trends to consider in this game. Alabama is 55-36-2 as a double-digit favorite against the spread in SEC play under Nick Saban. Kentucky has failed to cover in each of their last 3 games as an underdog. I think Alabama will win the game, but I do think they won't have the offensive dominance they had last week. I think that was as much, in some cases, about LSU's ineptitudes on that side as it is Alabama's dominance. I think they progressed nicely on that side, but I don't think we're going to see a 42-point performance. I'm expecting this game to be a little bit lower scoring. I think Kentucky's defense will play well. I think Alabama wins the game 28-17 or thereabouts in that vicinity.